So there has just been an insane leak from Google detailing a bunch of their ranking factors, and it of course has the entire SEO world chatting about it right now. And there's actually a ton of information to go over here, so yeah, let's just get into it. So I'm looking at this article over here on ip.com, and you can go over and read it as well if you want to read the full thing. But I'm just going to go over what I think are the most important parts and my reactions to it. First of all, it's good to know that this just came out very recently, so there hasn't been a ton of time to spend with it yet, so there will definitely be more information about this coming out in the future. So head over to my channel and give me a sub if you want to stay updated. Next up, there's a ton of information here on Google's ranking systems. However, there are no scoring functions assigned to each different ranking factor. And also worth noting that this information appears to be extremely current. First of all, there appears to be about 14,000 different ranking features, which is insane. And I'll skip over a bunch of this stuff right here and get to the meaty part. So first of all, we're covering some of Google's lies. So first, we don't have anything like domain authority, which is something they've said over the years. However, you can see here that it appears they have a signal called site authority. Again, we don't know specifically what it means, but we do know that they are measuring site authority and using it to help rank websites on Google. If you've been following me, you probably saw this video I released recently where I talked about why backlinks are probably still the strongest Google ranking factor, so definitely watch this video for more info on that. Next up, we don't use Google clicks for rankings, which again is something I talked about in one of my videos. I'm not really remembering which one exactly. But there is a lawsuit going on, and it came out that Google was indeed using clicks to help determine rankings, even though they've said repeatedly that they were not. Here are a bunch of different types of clicks they are measuring here. It says additionally, the documentation represents users as voters and their clicks are stored as their votes. The evidence is fairly definitive. There can be little doubt that Google uses clicks and post-click behavior as part of its ranking algorithms. So essentially, you just want to make sure that your users are clicking on your article, they're reading your article, they're clicking around your website, they are not pushing the back button and pogo sticking and reading a different article. So again, user engagement metrics here are something to consider. Next Google lie, there is no sandbox. Of course, John Mueller always deleting his tweets about this kind of stuff. And it looks like there is an attribute called host age that is used specifically to sandbox fresh spam in serving time. Meaning that yes, the sandbox is probably a thing. Yes, you are not ranking very quickly for a reason. Google is holding you back for a second and just not letting you rank right away. Next up, we don't use anything from Google Chrome for ranking. Again, I believe this came out in the lawsuit. And it does look like they are using Google Chrome data to measure user engagement metrics and to help rank sites on Google using that. And this part gets a laugh out of me. Google spokespeople are well-meaning, but can we trust them? And the answer he gives here is the quick answer is not when you get too close to the secret sauce, which again on my channel over here in the backlinks video, I posed this question. Do you think Google would tell us how to exploit their algorithm? And the answer is no. When you start getting close to that secret sauce, they're going to keep lying because they cannot tell us how to exploit their algorithm. They cannot tell us how to abuse their product. So if you're doing SEO, you don't listen to Google, you listen to people who are testing. Next up, I'm going to skip this part because it's a little information dense. I'll get you to the meatier bit. But you could go ahead and give this a read to get a better understanding of how Google works. Got this paragraph here, which I think is quite important. The bottom line here is that you need to drive more successful clicks using a broader set of queries and earn more link diversity if you want to continue to rank. So yeah, it's packed with a bunch of stuff here. So you want successful clicks, you want people clicking your website, you want them having a good experience, you want the people finding your website using a broad range of keywords, and you want some link diversity, meaning links from a different variety of sources. A focus on driving more qualified traffic to a better user experience will send signals to Google that your page deserves to rank. You should focus on the same to recover from the helpful content update. So yeah, it sounds simple, but write good content, drive users to that content, and have the users have a good experience on your website. Next up, authors are an explicit feature. It looks like Google is actually tracking the authors of your articles, and they're doing that right here. It's pretty clear that there is some comprehensive measurement of authors. Definitely something to keep in mind when you're thinking about all your EE stuff. Next up, we have demotions, and these are things that could knock you down a peg or two. Number one, anchor mismatch. Says when a link does not match the target site it's linking to, the link is demoted on the calculations. So basically, if you have anchor text or links that are linking to your content that are not relevant, they will just demote the link and not count it. Next up, you can get a SERP demotion if users are not interacting with your content well on the SERP, meaning if they're not clicking your content, you could get a demotion. Next up, you have a nav demotion. So if users are not able to easily navigate around your website and leads to a poor user experience, you can get to a demotion. We see this a lot actually when we're auditing websites. We see websites that have just crazy navs and you can't even really navigate around the site. And I'm an SEO and I can't even navigate around the site. So next up, we have the exact match domains demotion. However, I'm not really sure about this one because it does seem like exact match and partial match domains are still working quite well. So scrolling down here, you can see that we've got Wilson Roofing. So that's a partial match, Kid Roof partial match. Austin Longhorn Roofing partial match, Greater Austin Roofing, an exact match there. For lawyers, we even have this bestlawyers.com. So yeah, I would say exact match domains are still working quite well, but they might give it a little bit less power than they did before. Product review demotion, this one's interesting. It says there's not much information on it yet, but there does appear to be some kind of demotion for product reviews. Local demotion is also very interesting. There is an indication that global pages or super global pages can be demoted. This suggests that Google attempts to associate pages with a location and rank them accordingly. So yeah, if you've got a website that is trying to rank globally or for many locations at once, it might be a little bit harder than when you're trying to rank just one location. Next up, links still seem to be pretty important, which is good for us in the link building business. Again, check out my video on this for more information and some SERP analysis where I show why backlinks are probably still the strongest ranking factor on Google. But then we get into some pretty interesting stuff. Indexing tier impacts link value. And it says that Google's index is put into tiers and is based on a couple different things, where more important content is basically put on a different index than less important content. And here we got some really juicy stuff. So pages that are fresh are considered higher quality. Just like in this video on my channel where I talk about how I grew a site's traffic by 35% in 1 month just by freshening up some articles, by updating them. So you want your links to come from pages that are fresh or are otherwise in the top tier. And the top tier would be pages that are ranking high on Google or come from new sites as well. So your backlinks can be more impactful if they come from pages that are fresh, are from new sites, or are from articles that are ranking. Which a lot of this is just duh, but now we're just seeing it in the fine print, right? Next up, we got link spam and velocity signals. Talks about how the system can identify when there's a sudden spike in anchor text and spam links. So again, keep your anchor text natural and try to build very naturally and not spammy when you're doing link building. But also know that this could be good for Google for helping to identify a negative SEO attack, which is why we say a lot of the times it seems like Google is just good at ignoring this stuff overall, or at least getting better at it. And this one is really interesting. Google only uses the last 20 changes for a given URL when analyzing links. And it talks about how Google essentially keeps 20 versions of your website or page in its index, like the Wayback Machine, which is part of the reason why I've talked about before how it doesn't seem like you lose all value of a link if a link is removed from a page. And this line is interesting. They should give you a sense of how many times you need to change pages and have them indexed to get a clean slate in Google. So essentially, if you could get a page changed 20 times and have it re-indexed every time, at that point, it would be considered completely fresh from its old counterpart as it's been updated 20 times and would now be a clean slate in the eyes of Google. So if you're really trying to get a clean slate with a page on Google, you might need to get it changed and then re-indexed 20 times before Google will completely forget what the page used to be about before. But I'll be honest, this one's a little bit confusing for me, so I want to see some more information on exactly how people are thinking this one works. Next up, homepage page rank is considered for all pages, so when in doubt, build links to that homepage. This is why we love building that homepage authority. It says it is likely that this and site authority are used as proxies for new pages until they have their own page rank calculated. So yeah, having a strong homepage with backlinks could definitely be beneficial for you. Next up, homepage trust. Google decides how to value a link based on how much they trust the homepage. As always, you should be focusing on quality and relevance of your links instead of volume, of course. And yeah, get a nice trusty homepage, get some nice links flowing into it, and really show Google who you are and that you should be trusted, which is a duh for a lot of businesses, but for a lot of SEOs, they don't really think about this stuff. Next up, font size of terms and links matters. And it talks about how bolding might actually still provide some kind of value to Google. And they also talk about how doing the same thing for anchor text is still a thing as well. This is actually interesting to me because I thought bolding was just a thing in the past, but people still do it. And again, we don't know how much this matters, but it does look like they do take into account bolding. Also says I did not see a single mention of disavows, which doesn't mean that disavows don't work, but it suggests that this disavow data is decoupled from the core ranking systems. And if you've been following me for some time, you probably know that my stance on disavows is that they should only be used as a last resort and that we don't really use them very much at all. However, I did write this article recently on k.html backlinks as we've been seeing some sites recover after disavowing them. And normally it looks like stuff that Google would just be very good at ignoring, but for some reason it looks like they're not ignoring these things completely. Next up, documents get truncated. So if you have a very long document, it might mean that the most important of your content should be at the top of the document. And after a certain amount of time, Google essentially just stops reading it. So authors should continue to put their most important content early on in the article. How early, we don't really know. But basically, I think this only really matters if your article is quite long. Next up, short content is scored for originality. This is probably why thin content is not always a function of length. So if you have some really short content, but it is unique and adds some value, it could still be valuable to the reader and to Google. And there is also still a keyword stuffing score. So hopefully you're not doing keyword stuffing at this point in time. Page titles are still measured against queries. And they just talked about how the title of your page should match what the users are searching for. And it also mentions here that placing your target keywords first is still the move. So having your target keywords at the very beginning of your page's title. Next up, dates are very important, and we already talked about how content freshness was important, but this is actually talking about how they keep track of the dates on your document. And this is a change that I'm actually going to have to make because on a lot of my websites, I do not include the dates. I like to keep the content fresh, but I don't like putting the date. So it might be actually a good thing to put the date on the website as well as keeping it fresh. Next up, domain registration info is stored about the pages. And this is likely used to inform the sandboxing of new content. And this also could affect the expired domain abuse policy as the domains are changing hands, they're changing registration. There might be some information there that Google is collecting. Next up, video-focused sites are treated differently. If more than 50% of pages on the site have a video on them, the site is considered video-focused and will be treated differently. We don't know how the sites are treated differently, but definitely something to keep in mind here. Now, I know a lot of SEOs like to put videos on all of their pages. Yeah, it looks like this might have some kind of effect. Of course, YMYL stuff is scored differently. And now this is a big one. There are gold standard documents. So basically there are human labeled documents versus automatically labeled annotations, meaning that it looks like there are people that are going in and they are rating documents as saying this is the super important one, this is the best one, this is the gold standard. So how that impacts rankings, we don't really know, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Next up, site embeddings are used to measure how on topic a page is. The site focus score captures how much the site sticks to a single topic. The site radius captures how far the page goes outside the core topic based on the blah, blah, blah. So yeah, sticking to the topic, probably a thing to do. And if your entire website is based around one topic, that probably has an effect too. And we've known this for a while. People will create niche sites or more niche down sites about a specific topic in order to help rank higher and to beat out larger authority sites with more backlink authority. So it does look like they are still calculating this type of thing, but I don't think it's quite as powerful as it was before, as it seems like backlink authority is just so strong right now. But I think what it could also be used for is making sure that you're only writing about topics that are related to your website. So if your website is all about dogs and cats, and then you have an article about getting a car loan or something like that, Google will probably see that as not too relevant to your website and not let you rank for it. Next up, Google may be torching small sites on purpose. So they have an indicator if you have a small personal site. Again, not really sure how this is being used, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, right? As we know, a lot of these really small sites were hit by the HCU updates. And then we have some conclusions here, and this is the most important one to look at. Make great content and promote it well. And of course, he says he's just joking, because Google always says that you just need to make great content to rank right. But also it can be very true to an extent, since it is quite obvious that making better content and promoting it to audiences that it resonates with will yield the best impact on those measures. So number one, make good content. So this is defined by content that matches the search query and that users interact with well on your website, creating good user signals, then promoting it to audiences that it resonates with. So this could be with sharing as well as with backlinks. And if you want to win with Google long term, you're going to have to make things that continue to deserve to rank. So I think this is probably especially important for people who are doing affiliate and ads-based sites, as a lot of the time they don't really make content that users really like, so their user engagement metrics are down. But for the long-term rankings, you're definitely going to want to make better content. Yeah, that's what I think are the most important things, at least of the ones that I've seen so far. And there are probably a lot more things to go through here. Because like we saw earlier, there are about 14,000 ranking features. So if you want to stay updated on this, I highly recommend you going over to this site, iPullRank, and reading this article, as well as subscribing to me over on YouTube, where I'll continue to post updates of anything that I think is important, as well as giving me a follow on LinkedIn and X, as a lot of stuff is really going down on these platforms as well. And I really saw this because people were just going absolutely insane about it on Twitter this morning. You can see when you search for a Google leak, you've just got all these posts on Twitter. We've got Rand, we've got Charles, Aleda, all just going crazy about this. But yeah, this is probably the most important leak I've seen in a long time, as this one comes direct from Google, not like the Yandex leak that we saw earlier that was from ex-Google engineers. So anyway, highly recommend giving this a read and highly recommend subscribing to me to stay updated. All right, that's it for now, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.